Okay, we are recording now. This is Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 2 reading. It is December 11th, and we are starting on Chapter 3, Puzzles and More. Okay, before you embark on the adventure of tackling inheritance issues, be sure you have enough space in your life to devote to the details. Do not attempt this journey if you're in the middle of buying or selling a home, moving, getting married or divorced, legal complications, or any other project to which you must devote focused concentration. Putting a trust together often takes more time than expected. Doing it right may involve several trips to the lawyer or other professionals. A simple will is not likely to take as much time. You can download one from the internet and complete it over a couple of days. This chapter does not address the subjects of wills or living trusts. The unique complexity of most irrevocable trusts mandates special care and meticulous attention to detail. Since all living trusts become irrevocable once the grantor passes, we again suggest that you set up a living trust using irrevocable trust principles. Putting the pieces together. Although we have gone over the duties of the various positions in the trust, we have not outlined responsibilities of each participant to put together a trust. Grantor. The grantor is responsible for setting the rules of his or her trust. Meeting with suitable counselors, he or she writes the indenture, usually by editing a generic draft, thus streamlining it to his or her family's benefit. To bring a trust into being, he or she must personally display intent to charge the trustees with duties enforceable in court. Footnote 16 is just a court case. As grantor, you receive at least 1% of the trust capital units, the TCU, for starting the common law trust. And as the estate grows and the TCUs split, you receive more trust capital units. There is usually no such equivalent provision in a statutory trust. You also place into the trust the initial corpus to become an exchanger and receive more TCUs. Footnote 17 just says see Appendix H for changes into trust. So make a note that we should probably go back there and read that. Any earnings from the exchanged assets are no longer taxable to you, except when you cash out the TCUs. There is a strong possibility that you may never do this, as it may be a taxable event. You may also pass on your TCUs to your beneficiaries. The grantor of a statutory trust transfers the assets into the trust. Taxes may apply. As outlined in Volume 1, grantors may retain significant control within the trust, although the trustees own the assets. The grantor can decide whether to treat revenues as income or corpus, and when or whether to distribute to the beneficiaries. Footnote 18. This provision is uncommon in statutory trusts. We believe this is because the information has been obscured. So that's the grantor. The exchanger. This section does not apply to statutory trusts. Anyone placing assets into a trust in return for TCUs becomes an exchanger. The most common reasons for being an exchanger are to provide financial security for children, aged parents, and others, and preserving assets for future generations. The trustees may allow exchangers to keep use of the property in exchange for services to the trust. Since all trustees have TCUs, and thus a stake in the trust, anyone who exchanges personal assets to add to the trust will find motivated allies to help build a strong financial base. Often, grandparents join in to add assets to the corpus to ensure the growth of the trust for the grandchildren. Brothers and sisters may also decide to join this group endeavor by adding separate trusts under the management organization. We handle trust interface in a later chapter. Over time, a trust may have a long list of exchangers, and some TCUs may be exchanged into other trusts. Trust certificates, footnote 19, says see Appendix J, Presentation 1, Goldwater versus Altman for the first California case involving a common law trust and its certificates. Trust certificates received in exchange for property have no fair market value until sold. Therefore, they do not represent taxable gain to the participant. Footnote 20 is another court case. Further, even bad bargains to a genuine business transaction do not result in taxable gifts. For example, the exchange of value stock intra-trust for TCUs which have no set value. Footnote 21. Quote, even bad bargains in a genuine business transaction are held not to result in taxable gifts where value of stock was in excess of the consideration. The transfers were made in the ordinary course of business and are not subject to gift tax. Attorney Jaworski, later prosecutor in Watergate, argued this case against the IRS. Estate of Anderson versus CIR. Okay, that was 21. Okay, back to the reading. Do not worry. The IRS will honor your tax indenture and respect the transfer of ownership of the property. Although you may need to prove substance of transaction in Section 671 of the IRC, your legal position is addressed directly and clearly. No items of a trust shall be included in computing the taxable income and credit of the grantor or of any other person solely on the grounds of his dominion and control over the trust under Section 61 or any other provisions of this title, except as specified in this subpart. Note, handling the trust funds is the taxable issue, not the dominion and control over them. If the grantor diverts the money of the trust to personal use, the grantor risks having the trust annulled since the trust funds must be separate from his or her own. The trust is a separate legal entity. Funds received from the trust by the grantor may be taxable. Okay, so it's anyone who's placing assets into the trust in return for these TCUs is an exchanger. And evidently, anybody can throw their assets into the trust. Anybody have any questions about that? Because I have a feeling this is going to starting to get really complicated. So I want to break it down per reading of what something is. Okay, nobody has any questions, right? Okay. Manager and general manager. The first exchanger experienced in running the business or handling the property of the trust sometimes becomes the general manager, who acts as an advisor to the board of trustees. In larger trusts, he or she may even have subordinate managers. Management positions could be created for other exchangers, but usually not. If the grantor has become a general manager, responsibilities can be broad or narrow depending on the needs of the trust and trustee involvement. However, we recommend the trustees take over more responsibility as the trust matures. The main objective of the grantor is to retire, so he or she needs to train others to take over daily duties. Some grantors are incapable of managing and should not become involved. Executive Secretary. The Executive Secretary handles minutes, the trust certificate register, and trust certificates. trust protector. Chosen at the beginning of the trust to work for the grantor only, the trust protector guards the trust by watching the trustees. Wow, it's kind of like in Vegas where you got the pit bosses watching the dealers. With the power to fire a trustee for cause, he automatically becomes a counselor and mediator. Although not involved in the early setup procedures, the paperwork in the original trust documents appoints him or her. The use of a protector is more likely within the common law trust, that can apply to an irrevocable statutory trust. See Chapter 11 for details. Okay, and by the way, guys, you have any questions whatsoever, just unmute and ask at any time. You don't have to wait for me to get done speaking. Okay, legal and financial advisors. Advisors are optional. There is no legal requirement other than it is good to speak with others to get an understanding of complexities and to get different points of view. These are the people with the potential to become a protector or a trustee. Given the general education of this specialized topic, finding legal and financial counselors who both understand and support the use of trusts in general may be difficult. The counsel you receive from people in these positions may be important to the success of this venture. It can save your bacon or cost you your shirt, risking an otherwise bulletproof trust. To rely on an uninformed professional, despite credentials and assurances of loyalty about the specialized area of trusts, is dangerous. Seek empathetic, knowledgeable counselors to advise you. Sometimes a grantor's own doubts reflect in the advisors. If you want your advisors to learn about irrevocable trusts or any other specific subject, research the matter yourself. Then you can speak with assurance when you insist on their performance. The negative attitude will most likely disappear. If it does not, at least you know it is coming from the advisors, not you. In grantor-advisor relations, we discourage the need for review of every action by a professional. If you are so uncertain, use a statutory trust. A common law trust is not for everyone. Your advisors must, of course, have a good working knowledge of their own areas of expertise. They should be able to prove this is not just by academic degrees, but by results with other clients. Get references and check them. Once selected and retained, professional advisors commit themselves to protect your assets. You may want to issue TCUs or units of beneficial interest, UBIs, to them. For more information on this subject, see Chapter 9, Distribution. Okay. Anybody have a question? Because I actually have a question. What the heck is a TCU? Like, is it just a unit of measure of the assets in the trust?
Yes.
Okay, cool. First steps to creating your trust, gathering the elements. We have talked about the history and advantages of the irrevocable common law trust. Now, let us recap so you can see how the trust you create comes together. To set up an irrevocable trust, several details become necessary. These four participants are key: grantor, 2 trustees, at least 1 beneficiary. The protector is optional. We strongly suggest his or her inclusion at the beginning of the trust. This provides the grantor with peace of mind. The participants and needed objectives decide the type, format, and number of trusts needed. If you have no relatives or associates who wish to take part as trustees or protector, the trust management company you choose may have people to fill these positions until you feel confident about replacing them. Okay, now we're going to go from the title to the duties and responsibilities and roles. For the grantor, they create trust contract and choose the names. To keep the family history intact, use a family name. A combination of the grandparents' names can give roots to the family history. For example, the grantor's mother's birth last name is Karina, and his wife's mother's birth last name is Polanter. The trust name might be the Karina Polanter Trust. The grantor is the initial exchanger and fixes trust goals, purposes, and priorities. He or she then appoints the first trustee and names beneficiaries to hold trust certificates. For a statutory trust, the grantor names the beneficiaries and sets the distribution percentages. Now for the trustees, they manage assets, protect beneficiaries, and most important, see that assets or funds multiply and pass through to beneficiaries. Further, trustees are responsible for faithful implementation of the trust indenture. Now you got beneficiaries. People who benefit the trust is created and from whom courts of law uphold properly set up and managed trusts. Beneficiaries receive a percentage of earnings and assets of the estate and have not contributed to the trust setup. For the private trust, this is about trust capital units named on the trust certificate register as beneficiaries instead of exchangers. In the statutory trust, beneficiaries are named and the percentage is set in the trust indenture. Exchangers. Anyone who places assets into the trust. The initial exchanger is usually the grantor. Exchangers can be anyone who accepts an invitation from Board of Trustees. In a statutory trust, gifts are given to the trust for the beneficiaries, and assets added may carry tax consequences. Protector. Responsible to beneficiaries to oversee trustees' actions and ensure strict adherence to the indenture. Empowered by the indenture to mediate between beneficiary and trustee and correct, sue, or replace trustees who fail to perform their duties. Checklist. The following checklist may help you understand the fundamental steps to put together any irrevocable trust. It is not all-inclusive, but we give it here to set down a guideline and to stimulate your thinking. Although the steps are numbered, you may choose to do some at the same time. For example, step 2 and 9 may be executed in tandem. For those only interested in a statutory trust setup, replace the term exchanger with transferee and omit references to trust capital units or trust certificates. Step 1. Research and study to determine what trust type is suitable for your family. Responsibility is the grantor's. Step 2. Create, write, edit a trust indenture so it applies to your particular circumstances. This is where inheritance issues appear. If your children do not have children, who then inherits the TCUs, how are assets passed on? In a statutory trust, the succession of inheritance generally goes first to your children. Should they not survive or not have children, the succession often goes to the children of siblings. That's the grantor's responsibility. Step 3. Select the first trustee. Please refer to the list of qualifications found in Chapter 2. Grantor's responsibility. Step 4. Name beneficiaries. The first choice consists of blood relations and adopted children. Stay within the family boundaries, naming at least one person. For the private trust, if the grantor needs to go outside the family, choose cooperative people sympathetic and appreciative of their newfound benefits. Non-blood relationships usually cannot pass on their TCUs. Look at beneficiaries as asset to secure the future and guardians of the trust. They are the first people to sound the alarm if something goes wrong with the cash flow. Again, the grantor's responsibility. Step 5, select the co-trustee and other officers to support the Board of Trustees. Although hired by the first trustee, it is best these first officers have the blessing of the grantor. Discuss trustee fees. This is a responsibility of the grantor and first trustee. Step 6, before creating final drafts of documents, tell others of the positions selected for them and their responsibilities. Be sure they are willing to join in. Have meetings with them, explain the benefits and the risks. This is a responsibility of the grantor and the first trustee. Step 7, make sure that all officers receive plenty of educational materials. Responsibility of grantor and first trustee. Step 8, make a list of the names, title, addresses, including email, phone number, etc., of all those involved with the trust. This includes trustees, beneficiaries, advisors, successor trustees, and managers. Responsibility of the grantor and first trustee. Step 9, create asset schedules or lists of all items exchanged into the trust. These should be goods and accounts that appreciate over time or are of intrinsic value to the family. Property might include insurance policies, vehicles, financial and investment accounts, collectibles, art objects, jewelry, real property, investment accounts, patent, copyright, service mark or trademark documents, large business equipment. This is the responsibility of the grantor, exchangers with support of trustees. Step 10, watch progress of third party, trust indenture creation. Review its contents periodically. Responsibility of the grantor. Step 11, once the trust indenture, inventory and asset schedules, lists, and trust certificates are complete and signed, hold the first Board of Trustees meeting. Familiarize all participants with the documents and the grantor's strategies. Delegate responsibilities to open bank accounts, register, and record transfer of ownership of properties placed in trust, and tell beneficiaries of their status. Responsibility, trustees. Step 12. For a minimum of 6 months, hold monthly Board of Trustees meetings. This solidly sets up plans for trust administration should a sudden change happen, say in the economy or the grantor's health. The current the current status of any investments and major financial decisions needs review, as well as contracts or other agreements. Knowing the status of any leases or other long-term commitments helps the board members keep up on trust events, as well as current and future matters about beneficiaries. Responsibility, first trustee. Okay, trust book sections. Okay, anybody have any questions about that?
They go through it fast in this one, don't they? They're stacking it on.
Yeah. But I like it because it gives people an idea of like what steps they kind of need to go through.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's not as easy as a lot of people think.
Mm-hmm. I know people are always like, oh, I'm just going to go set up a trust. They don't understand the amount of workload and how many people they got to hire.
People went to college for 4 years to learn how to do this stuff.
I know, right? Hey, Lawrence, did you want to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with y'all. How many people you got to hire and or train?
Yep. And the grantor kind of needs to know his stuff, or at least be really willing to dig in and learn. So the people he hires don't screw it up. Okay.
That is why I love the ANC so much.
Yeah. Okay, trust book sections. Once decided, the trust, in the form of 3-ring binder, comes into existence. Below is an outline of the documents most likely included in the original trust and suggestions of how to use the sections. A statutory trust does not have a certificate registrar. minutes, and exchangers. All other sections may apply to a statutory trust. Okay, name, trust indenture, contents between 20 and 30 pages. Notes, the more details, the better. Initial corpus, contents, a schedule of original assets put into the trust. The list includes stock certificates, promissory notes, cash belonging only to this particular trust, the local fair market value of the original funds, and other assets to start the trust, settles the value of the original corpus. Notes is the value of the total initial corpus sets up the accounting baseline, the demarcation line between income and corpus. See Appendix B, Sample Format 6, Initial Funding. So there's income, and then I guess the corpus is just the assets? That can't be actual money income? Or is just the income stuff that's coming in or building up wealth? And then the corpus is everything else? That's a question. Anybody want to chime in?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah, so it's saying the demarcation line between income and corpus. So is income just money coming in, like actual tangible money? And then the corpus is just the assets? Or what's the line between income and corpus?
Yeah, I think you just said it. Income will be.
What page you on now?
Income is
I'm
taxable.
on 31.
Okay, that's where I'm at. I don't see.
This is under initial corpus in the notes section.
Okay, all right.
So it says the demarcation line between income and corpus. So when would income also include like any kind of stocks that are now bringing money in?
Well, I think that it just separates that income is taxable, whereas corpus is assets.
Correct.
I would think it would be like if you had a rental building and you were collecting rent from it, the value of it would be corpus.
Actually, that's exactly what I was thinking, Judy. Something like that.
Not taxable.
Yeah, anything that's earning money, you're getting interest on something or payments or whatever, bringing in money. Investments.
I heard the term. I don't know if you guys ever heard it. It's incidental income, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I think that's what that would be considered if, say a property was in the trust or belonged to the trust and it was being rented out to benefit the the beneficiary.
Yeah, money.
But it wouldn't be considered income. It would be considered coincidental income, which is not taxable.
Well, we didn't really get to the taxable part yet, but it seems like my understanding is when you set up a trust, it's not just to park stuff there, but you're supposed to be making it grow,
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right, trustee acceptances and resignations. The trust indenture may have the signature of the first trustee. This section contains the formal acceptances of the co-trustee and protector together with any fee agreements. These acceptances may include a description of duties. These are standalone documents which provide proof the trustee is legally empowered to act. Notes under this is make a trustee lineage, List the date, who hired the trustee, and the name of the new trustee. Leave a column for the date of resignation. As the trust matures, this list may become lengthy. See Appendix C. F. Acceptances and resignations. Minutes. Document major decisions about beneficiaries, certificates, buying and selling of assets, and disputes. Notes under this is the resolutions are the legal details of the trust. They prove substance of transaction. Hold on, sorry guys. They prove substance of transaction, that is, the trust performs as a trust. Now we're under family history, general manager reports, and reports to trustees. Contents. Build a solid history of the family for future generations. Imagine your grandchildren reading this long after you are gone. What is it they need to know? Notes. Keep in vaults the history of royal and or dynastic families. Provides information about the true motives of current politics. They use this knowledge to preserve their power base. I bet they do. Financial documentation and asset registers. Original receipts for significant assets. Keep assets listed on the schedule of initial funding with the original schedule. Keep assets bought by the trust here. These are the notes. This paperwork can be the key to keep the trust intact. The general rule is to keep enduring asset paperwork in the trust book. Those agreements and documents that expire within a few years can be kept outside the trust book. It is a decision the trustees need to make. Legal. Contracts, agreements, joint property separation, deeds, and transfers. Notes. Clear-cut agreements resolve major disputes. Get all agreements in writing. Do not continue without documented proof of commitments. Okay.
That's a key point.
Yeah, that would absolutely help you in court if it ever got to that.
And you almost have to prepare for that posture so you can be ready.
Yep.
As if things will go to court, then you will have your record to support. It's on the litigants to establish a record to be used in court. The more the better.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of, someone needs to have impeccable organizational skills with all this.
Yep.
Asset exchange or transfer. Letters to the Board of Trustees to accept the gift, transfer, or exchange, and minutes accepting the goods into the trust. Except for the TCU exchange, the statutory trust needs the same letters from transferees. Notes. State motivation for putting assets into the trust. All right. Now we're going down to information about privacy, how to handle government inquiries, etc. Educational materials that current and later trustees need to have. Notes. This body of information continually grows. It eventually needs its own filing protocols as the trust matures. For the diligent trust administrator, create an index. Okay, now we're on page 33. TCU registers. Keep old asset registers when they have so many keep old asset registers when they have so many changes they need updating. Notes. TCU registers need trustee signatures. You may want to keep TCUs from other trusts in this section. Trust assembly is time-consuming and offers an incredible opportunity to bring the family together, to gain an education about family, and asset management, and to walk into a new world where you create your own destiny. It is worth the effort to do it right. Take your time.
So I was just going to say, you were commenting on how to be, that you need to be organized and that kind of thing, and learn how to do it, how to do it. And I reluctantly became a secretary for a nonprofit, and that's good training in itself, to organize what's said at the meetings, write it down, distribute it, kind of keep track of money of the bank account sometimes and things like that. So I didn't want to do it, but I found out I was learning things by doing it that could prepare you for this kind of work,
Heck yeah, that could. All right, Judy, I'm making you my secretary.
No, thank you. I said reluctantly, remember? I didn't want to do it, but I'm finding that I'm learning. This is preparation for this kind of work,
I know. I started actually looking for jobs that were in trust companies or some kind of like private banking or something like that. I'm like, dude, I need to learn from these guys.
Yeah, a trust is like you're setting up a family nonprofit, essentially, kind of thing. It's a different name.
What's that,
I just wanted to let you guys know that I went on the website, and it's called passingbucks.com, and you have to see the resources on there that are free. The interviews that they've done, the books they recommend you to read. It's just full of so much information, and I just wanted to comment on the what were you guys just talking about before? I'm sorry, my
organization, nonprofit.
No, you were talking about the corpus and the income.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I understand from reading and listening to some of the interviews. The grantor puts in the corpus, whatever the assets are, and the grantor also determines what would be income. What it means, I don't know, but that's what I read and I listened to on an interview. Sorry, I'm working, and so it's loud where I am, so I apologize, but I'm going to mute myself.
No, we can totally hear you, so.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I just recommend it, to go on there. I mean, there's just so much information and books. They recommend a book that they, on the Morgan, and it's like an 800-page book, but it, from what I understand, basically explains to you how the trusts were set up. And also, if you sign up for their newsletter, they'll send you an ebook, which is phenomenal. It's like 15 pages, and it explains how a trust was set up on with a couple that were going to get married. And instead of doing a prenup, they did trust. But it was amazing how it was done. Anyway, I will yield. Just info.
Okay, and if anyone can find that website and put it in the folder for Volume 2, that would be great.
Dawn, how do you put it in the folder? I'm sorry, I'm not really savvy with Telegram.
Oh, so what was the name of the website again?
It's called passingbucks.com. So BUCKS.com, but passingbucks.com. And I think it might even be in the book somewhere. But I watched a couple interviews of, because they went after a couple of the writers of this book. It was really interesting because they did not want these books published.
Yes. Yeah, I know. They were they took them to court and said,
yeah. So
no,
YouTube has them interviewed. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube. Anyway, just information. It's just,
all right,
there's so much to it.
I put it in there. So
okay.
Thank you for that.
No worries.
Yeah, I haven't been on their website in forever. So, all right, here we go then. Let me get out of here. Does anyone want to take their shot at reading chapter 4, or you guys okay with me reading again? Okay, I'm going to take that as you're okay with me reading again.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
would help out. I'm just so tired.
Yeah, no, no worries. I know you're constantly working, so put your
What
feet up.
page are you on?
I am on 35 or 60 in the PDF. Okay, chapter 4, Building Blocks of the Future. This chapter deals with two parts of trust organization. The first is the relationship among the trust officers and to the protector. The second is deciding what trust is responsible for what activity and its cash flow. We provide several tables to help you correlate the people, duties, and relationships and their respective trusts. Refer often to these tables as we explain the foundational elements. Even those familiar with the layout presented need to go slowly through this chapter. For simplicity, we use two trustees. We created one fictional family, which operates through each of the trusts we described, and added a story about the members' lives to make this more interesting. Considerations. What takes the most time to put a trust together is gathering all the necessary transfer paperwork and inventory. Sometimes it can take a year or more to get everything ready to turn over to a board of trustees. In that year, the average grantor goes through many soul-searching considerations about whether to put about whether to put assets in trust and what they should be. Doing so gives up all but limited control. Only the grantor can continue the process. It is not unusual for people to get cold feet. Even though they have paid much money for a trust, they walk away. This section addresses how the various trusts work together. After you get through feeling overwhelmed, a thorough study of this chapter contributes to your peace of mind should you decide to move forward. Unlimited flexibility. Through The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1, you gained an understanding of what to put into a trust and transfers and exchanges. You also learned who can be the trustees and the role of the protector. It is now time to grasp the techniques of structuring an administrative format. Understanding the base flow pattern allows creativity and nearly unlimited flexibility. Table A, relationships. Be sure you have the trust officers lined up correctly, though we provide these tables to help you with your interrelationships. Refer to the relationship key to understand the symbols. Okay, so there's a table of relationships here. All right, I'm just going to video screen this because it's hard to... Wait, what the heck? Okay, here we go. So you got the grantor. What's this? What's the crossing out stuff? Okay, you got grantor, trustee 1, trustee 2, protector. Then you've got status, person, related, spouse, mother. Oh, okay, here's the key. Cannot be related and cannot be an adverse party is the side stripes. The other one can be related and subordinate and not applicable. Okay, so grantor to trustee 1 cannot be related and cannot be an adverse party. Grantor to trustee 2 can be related and subordinate. Same with beneficiaries and protector. So trustee 1 to trustee 1, not applicable. Trustee 1 to trustee 2 can be related and subordinate. So can the beneficiaries. However, the protector cannot be related and cannot be an adverse party to the trustee 1. Trustee 2 to trustee 1 can be related and subordinate. Trustee 2 to trustee 2 is not applicable. And then trustee 2 to beneficiaries can be related and subordinate. But trustee 2 to protector cannot be related and cannot be an adverse party. Then you've got the protector to trustee 1 cannot be related or an adverse party. Protector to trustee 2 and to beneficiaries cannot be related and cannot be an adverse party. And protector to protector is not applicable. Okay, status, related. Spouse, mother, father, siblings, children. Non-adverse party is a spouse, mother, father, siblings, children, employers, or any other subordinate position to the grantor. Adverse party is in-laws, non-blood related people, and relatives of a greater relationship than above described. Okay, so let's stop sharing. Okay, Table B, subordinates. The Board of Trustees, including the exclusive secretary and general manager, hold a certain affiliation to one another. The same is true with the protector. We have created the following table for references. Oh, okay, I can't do that anymore. Okay, so share this once again. Okay, so, stop. What are you doing? Okay, subservient. Trustee 1, trustee 2, beneficiaries, protector. So, can horizontal positions be subordinate to vertical positions? Okay. What is this saying? Grantor cannot be subordinate to trustee 1, but how am I supposed to read this? If the second trustee is blood relation or an employee of the grantor, he or she cannot assume the first trustee position should the adverse trustee leave or the grantor die. So how are we supposed to read this? So is it saying that the grantor is not subordinate to trustee 1, but is subordinate to trustee 2 and beneficiaries?
Okay. This is how I understand it. So the adverse trustee is somebody who's not related. You can have one relation and one not. So, and that's what saves it if you have two trustees. One has to be not related, and that would be the adverse trustee. Okay?
Okay. All right. Let me unshare that. Okay, family matters. Before we lay out a trust format, we need to create a fictional family with some, what the hell? Delete. All right, hold on, guys. Sorry. Delete. I have something covering the words. Okay. If this family matters, before we lay out a trust format, we need to create a fictional family with some of its unique problems. We have even included a short description of each of them to make this example easier to follow. We reference this family in future discussions. And this. Okay, so got the Allen family. So George Allen, crew cut gambler. Mother is frail health, Karina. Father is Henry and travels. Joseph Allen is the husband, dark hair, glasses, owns ABC Machining. Sandra J. Allen is the wife, blonde hair, blue eyes, model, works part-time. Greta J, long brown hair, artist, confused. And then you got Casey Allen, 10, athlete. Tammy, 15, vain, blonde. Rosie, red hair, 13, shy. Carl, black hair, 9, silly. And Peter, brown hair, 4, demanding. It's funny. Okay, so we got Joseph and Sarah Allen plan to set up a family trust. They have 4 children, Tammy, Rosie, Carl, and Peter. Joseph is concerned about his mother, Karina, whose health is failing, even though she is only 42. Sandra is worried about her sister, Greta, who got into drugs and has not yet put her life together. George is Joseph's brother. He spent 10 years in the Army, is ambitious, but has a weakness for gambling, and often takes trips to Las Vegas. His wife left him, leaving behind their daughter, Casey. When Joseph told him about plans to create an irrevocable trust, George became interested. Selecting the board of trustees. So, Sarah Allen's cousin, Darren Portenkin, agreed to become the adverse trustee. Joseph felt his brother's continual trips to Las Vegas disqualified him from being the co-trustee. Because Sandra's father travels too much, he did not have the time to take part in the family trust. Joseph and Sandra decided on a common friend, Karen Rosencroft, as the second trustee. The protector would be an accountant, James Peniel. Because of his unique position, he would be the first to notice unusual changes in the cash flow. The skeleton. Table D is a management trust layout connecting the trusts managed by it. The trust names represent family members. For example, Paula D. Smithers is Sandra, Allen's grandmother. The business trust is the Smithers Family Trust. For Joseph to place his business into trust, he became a member with the Smithers Family Trust. He remains in control of the business and the profits flow into the family trust. Since it is too much of a risk to have $2 million worth of machinery vulnerable, he places it into an asset holding trust named after a favorite uncle, Saul M. Myers. He realizes that not all the equipment should be in one trust, and later will ask the Board of Trustees to move the electrode discharge machine into another trust. Through a joint property agreement explained in Chapter 17, Joseph and Sandra separated their assets. The home is in her name through a quitclaim, and she places it into a Dawson Trust, named after her maternal grandmother. Okay, so I think I'm going to share this screen. Dadgummit. Stop it. Okay, let's see. So just to get a better idea of what we're talking about here. So you got the management trust is the Allen J. Family Trust. Darren is the trustee and Karen's the trustee. Checking accounts, investments, promissory notes, accounting, and financial management. Then you've got a business trust named Smithers Family Trust, Allen J. Family Trust trustee, accounting, checking account, equipment, leases, cash flow from partnership with ABC Machining, machine equipment loan payments. Then you've got asset holdings trusts. This is Dawson Trust and SM Myers Trust. The Dawson Trust holds the residential property, while the SM Myers Trust holds the large equipment, electro discharge machines, lathes, mills, grinders. and all the Board of Trustees meetings for the business and asset holding trust takes place as part of the management trust, Allen J. Family Trust. All the accounting for all 4 trusts happens through this management trust. The Allen J. Family Trust acts as the trustee for those trusts it manages and holds the majority of the TCUs. Any distributions into this management trust, though, are redistributed per its own TCU register. Refer to Table E cash flow because the Smithers Family Trust is in partnership with ABC Machining, and ABC Machining handles the daily accounts receivable and payable. The partnership is 40% ABC Machining and 60% Smithers Family Trust. The large equipment held in the SM Myers Trust is leased to ABC Machining through the business trust. The management trust has delegated into Smithers Family Trust the responsibility of collecting the monthly lease payments and handling maintenance for the equipment in the SM Myers Trust. The funds deposited into the Smithers Family Trust's checking account provide cash for investments, repayment of equipment loans, and maintenance fees. Smithers Family Trust owns a monthly management fee based on a percentage of funds received from all sources. In this case, the partnership, lease payments, and other investments. The Allen J. Family Trust gets fiduciary fees, management fees, and investment income from its own sources. Should the residential property be sold, the Allen J. Family Trust receives a trust capital unit payout, and the Board of Trustees may decide to reinvest the funds. By the way, there was a footnote in there. It just says, see Appendix D, sample format 21 for minutes about selling residential property. I actually do want to go into that, but after I read this. Allen J. Family Trust pays the secretarial services and general management responsibilities. Also, legal, accounting, and protector responsibilities comes through the Allen J. Family Trust. The protector, though, is paid by the grantor. Should there be a dispute between the protector and trustees where the grantor wishes one of the trustees fired. Okay, so I actually want to go to Appendix D. Okay, that's Appendix F. Appendix E. Because I want to see these minutes. Appendix, we're almost there. Holy crap. Appendix D goes forever. Okay, I'm not going to do all of this, but I just kind of quickly want to get an idea of what they mean. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to share screen. Okay, Appendix D, the minutes for the trustee meeting. Okay, this is on page 399 in the PDF, but it's actually 374 right here. So you got minutes of the trustee meeting of Allen J. Family Trust. Date, time, location, subject as trust capital unit, annual activation, cash flow projection, private investment banker. The following forming a quorum were present at this Board of Trustees meeting: Darren, Karen, Joseph, George, Terry, and Sandra. Administration is education, policies, and procedures. Coin collection inventory. Miss Rosencroft stated that finding a coin collector to give an honest appraisal may be difficult. She recommended getting several appraisals. Mrs. Allen, experienced in putting together a coin collection inventory, said the value changes every year. Mr. Portenkin suggested making an inventory every other year because of price change. Mrs. Allen agreed. Mrs. Allen stated 5 years ago it took her about 10 hours to inventory a coin collection of 3,000 coins. The value was about 65,000. Foreign anonymous bank accounts. Mrs. Rosencroft said it is difficult to find anonymous bank accounts. Mr. Porkin said that a private bank does not need to release information without a court order. Mr. Allen said he heard there are ways to stop agencies from taking bank records. Mr. Porkin said it is true but complicated and sometimes expensive. Mr. Porkin said Swiss bank accounts cost 50 grand, and the larger the deposit, the more it costs. It is also a wasting asset because there is no interest and the fees drain the principal. Writing a business letter. As noted by the Board of Trustees, there are different letter formats. Mrs. Rosencroft said that each letter should address one subject or use a heading for each subject. The board members reviewed various formats and chose the best suited to Allen J. Family Trust. Education. Successor trustee training manual. George Allen noted the training manual was either in Mrs. Allen's or Miss Croft's mail slot because Terry Baker, the account manager, joined the trust group 2 months after it began. She never went through the original training. Being in line to become a successor trustee, it was resolved that Terry Baker will take the successor trustee training manual home to read, and she will complete it by December 30th. It was further resolved that Terry Baker will turn in her trustee training test by September 30th. Status of recent minutes. George Allen apologized. He has not finished the February 2006 minutes. He thought he completed them until he assembled the agenda for this meeting. He is correcting the February minutes. They should be ready to sign by September 5th, 2006. Next Board of Trustees meeting. After discussion, it was resolved that March 15th, 2007 at 3 p.m. in Canton, Ohio will be the next Board of Trustees meeting. Legal. Articles and memos, vocabulary of civil code, blah, blah, blah. The Board of Trustees discussed the following words. Defeasible, fee simple, estates, tail, and remainder. Ms. Rosencroft stated that some of these phrases are not in the current dictionaries, and she has spoken to a librarian to urge her to keep an old Black Laws dictionary on the shelf. They become valuable because they explain the laws at the time of the legislation. Unwanted protection. The board members discussed a newspaper article where both daughters were angry with their fathers because he set up an irrevocable trust for them. Because their husbands could get none of the wife's money, the marriage collapsed. At least that is what the daughters thought. The board members became perplexed why the daughters were so unhappy about their arrangement. Their marriages are over, yet all their assets safe. Mr. Portenkin commented there is a phrase in the Bible that inheritance should apply to grandchildren. The board members discussed skipping the first generation. Mr. Portenkin stated there is usually trouble between parents and children where grandchildren are often closer to their grandparents. Trust, spendthrift clause, and IRS liens. The board members reviewed a newspaper article about the IRS and liens against the beneficiary funds. As an exercise, the Board of Trustees is to find the spendthrift clause in the Allen J. Family Trust Book. Beneficiary status. New TCUs. George Allen exchanged $20,000 for 15 TCUs. His distribution begins December 1st. Joseph Allen mentioned his daughter Tammy achieved high grades last year. The Board of Trustees promised she would get another TCU. After further discussion, it was resolved to issue one trust capital unit to Tammy Allen for scholastic achievement in 2006. Monthly beneficiary requirements, both Mr. Portkin and Ms. Baker reported there are 110 TCUs paid monthly, multiplied by $50 each. This equals $5,500. Mr. Portkin stated the trust monthly cash flow is about $10,800. This more than covers Allen J. Family Trust expenses. Mr. Portkin explained that as funds increase, the board decides whether to reinvest or to distribute. Mrs. Allen asked to place some of the collected money from gifts and disbursements, oh my gosh, to the 4 children to get better interest rates. After further discussion, it was resolved that Darren and Karen will look into other investments for funds held by Carl, Rosie, Peter, and Tammy, the children of Joseph and Mrs. Allen. It was further resolved that 25% of the current funds in the Eston money market account will be moved to achieve a higher yield. Current TCU holders. George Allen noted that Greta Allen exchanged funds for TCUs after the start of the trust. She did not want to take the disbursement then. The board members forgot about it. After further discussion, it was resolved that George Allen will find the previous minutes to discover how many TCUs were exchanged to Greta Allen. It was further resolved that Greta Allen will receive a distribution payout for those TCUs beginning September 1st. Financial cash flow projections. The members of the Board of Trustees looked at the detailed financial analysis chart supplied by Mr. Darren Portkin. After further discussion, it was resolved the financial chart analyzing the investments of the Allen J. Family Trust will be deleted from the agenda paperwork and minutes. And although referred in to here is not available outside this meeting, the physical paperwork will be shredded. Mr. Portkin explained the first column is the date where the investment began. He went over some of the listed investments, mentioning the TMT is slow pay, and although $1,000 a month is due, they were $100 short for August. He explained there are 3 different investments into XYT. Each investment pays for 5 years. The commodities investments in Tipper funds are volatile with large swings in payout percentage. Tipper funds pays anywhere from 6% to 40% a year. This is a new investment and the trust has not received any funds. The actual investment column reflects all of these smaller investment companies totaling $108,707.95 with an earning potential value of $95,036.85. The projected payout for September is $15,641.25. This number continually increases monthly unless some of the small investments fail. We expect anywhere from 3 to 30% failure rate with the investment types. The status is negative until the trust regains its principal, where the principal is paid back. The status column shows 0 or positive. Positive numbers show Allen J. Family Trust makes a profit on its original investment. This is why Mr. Portkin does not now wish to invest more funds. The status column must have more positive numbers. Currently, the monthly investment is 2.55%. September projections expect to be lower than 0.9%. Mr. Portkin seeks a person to train to handle internet trades. He presented the attached list of qualifications as shown on pages 3 and 4. Person must be computer savvy and especially familiar with internet procedures. The trainee needs broad business experience, including management. He or she is a risk taker or a gambler and good with numbers. Oh, hey, they can use the uncle that goes to Vegas all the time. Especially enjoying complex formulas. He or she should be younger than 60 years and naturally secretive. Being financially ambitious with accounting experience is extraordinarily helpful. Accountant interface is important. There needs to be a translation from any of his or her own actuary format of accounting standards. For example, financial projections do not apply to an accounting format and are often designed on spreadsheets or through other programs, translating gains from spreadsheet tracking to how the accounting needs to reflect this. Okay, wait, how long does this go? Oh, it's almost done. I just want to see. I'm totally invested at this point. To reflect this, okay. Dane Schrosser stock portfolio. Mr. Pertenkin stated the stock portfolio is weakening overall. Some stocks remain strong, but more than half have declined. After further discussion, it was resolved that Joseph Allen, Darren, Karen will review the Dane stock profile to decide what stocks to sell. It was further resolved that Karen will explore the real estate investment opportunities. Oppenheimer funds. Mrs. Rosencroft pointed out the mutual fund makes only 2% a year and recommends a transfer of some of these funds to a different account to earn a greater percentage. After further discussion, it was resolved to remove $20,000 from the Oppenheimer fund to place into other programs where the annual return is no less than 8%. Balance sheet. The board members referred to page 13 of the agenda. Assets, cash and bank accounts. Ms. Baker reported the Jackson Olson Federal Money Market account of $134,041.35 is accurate as of today. The Jackson Olson Federal Savings Account bank checking account of $22,048.34 is now down to $11,000 as payouts have occurred. The cash account is zero. Other assets. Capital unit payments is an error, and Ms. Baker needs to delete that line. A customer invoice of $76.50 belongs to Merit International. After further discussion, it was resolved to write off Merit International as a bad debt. Ms. Baker explained the primer direct number 1819 of 1885 is to collect insufficient funds. All other assets as listed are accurate. Liabilities and equity. Credit cards. The credit cards are paid off monthly and show a zero balance. Other liabilities. Business bills have been paid. The $43,470.83 Ellis loan payoff is at a rate of $603.34 a month. This loan refers to the Amber's payment made by Jason Williams. A discussion followed about potential investments. Mr. Portinkin said the trust has enough funds ahead to consider long-term investments where returns are 5 to 10 years in the future. He also explains there are South American no-load mutual funds emerging that pay anywhere from 30 to 50% a year. After further discussion, it was resolved that $1,000 to $5,000 are approved to invest into the South American mutual funds to test stability. Mr. Portinkin explained the Happier Mortgage, a cornerstone investment, has not paid in 2 months. Currently, we are tabling some of our investment plans until resolution. Profit and loss. The Board of Trustees reviewed to Allen J. Family Trust, July 2006, P&L, page 14. Ms. Baker was directed to delete the distribution in of $5,500 and to reverse the funds of $6,881 as investment income. There were no other charges on the P&L. After further discussion, it was resolved the Board of Trustees accepts the balance sheets and the profit and loss with noted corrections. There being no further business to come before the board, the trustees told the executive secretary to enter these proceedings into the trust records, and the meeting was adjourned. And then the Board of Trustees. Okay, I think that's important to read stuff like that so we can get like a really good idea of, what some of these meetings entail. Come on. We're at 4. Hey, what page was I on? Anybody remember? Or is everybody left?
It was 3 something. I don't have it open.
Was it 6
Above
or
300, right?
What was it?
was it 60 on PDF? I'm not sure.
It was 68. If you're reading on the side, the actual book number would be page 43 if you're looking at the paper. Table E, cash flow.
Must have read it wrong.
Okay. Yeah. Appendix D. That was it. Okay. So this is what they got. L&J Family Trust Management received, paid, investments, fiduciary fees, blah, 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 blah. Smithers paid.
I had a question about, they were talking about somebody was putting some money into the trust and they were converting it into TCUs or something like that. Do you
Yeah.
understand? I mean, do you know how that works or what you could
The
put some of?
TCUs, I believe, are just like a percentage of the overall profit of the trust. So they put money into a trust for a percentage of the profits. And they do some, I don't know how they do that exchange. But that's what encourages other people to start putting their assets into it, because they now he'll get a payout when they do payouts to the beneficiaries and stuff, I believe.
That would be related to if you have invested like 10% into the trust, you would get 10%
Yeah.
out or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I read on that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I mean, I'm just giving you what I read. So yes, if I wanted to invest in that business trust, I would put an asset in there, and then I don't know how they allocate those certificate units, but you're right. That's how I would end up having a vested interest in it. And then I would be part of that and make it grow, and I'm going to do the right thing by that trust.
Yeah, and just like the kid was getting good grades, they gave her one trust unit. So that increases her payout when they get payouts.
Right. And I think she's the best beneficiary. I think, right? Was she a beneficiary?
Yeah,
okay.
She was a beneficiary.
So they automatically get some type of trust unit certificates. Again, this is just the stuff I've been reading, so I'm sure it's more in depth than that.
So it's kind of like stock shares. I mean,
yes, exactly like
yeah, because it's a business. You're basically running the family business.
Yeah, so you put something in, and then you have a percentage of whatever the total capital is.
Well, whatever that certificate is worth.
Yes,
that's what you're going to. From what I understand, that's where you would, if they did a payout. Let's say they did a payout once or twice a year. Whatever that certificate was worth, that's what you would get if you held it. Maybe you held 5 of them. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably in the indenture.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's true. So you can hold on to them or you can cash them out. So it's almost like, okay, I'm going to put $5,000 in the trust, and now I get so many TCUs, the certificates, and at any point I can cash them in for a payout, or I could hold on to them, just like the stock market. You know, it's like, do I cash it out now or do I let it ride?
It'd be kind of like stock in the trust, wouldn't they? I mean, it's stock shares. I mean, they'd be like shares.
Yeah, you would sell your shares back.
Right. So it's like a stock. It's another trust is like a, shareholders or something stock.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if it's like every year they get a payout of what they have, or if they actually have to turn in their certificates to get the payout.
No, you don't turn in your certificates. That's your kind of like ownership, part of that ownership.
Okay,
that's so what entitles you to a payout. So if that trust is doing really well and they want to do a big payout, I mean, that's where your vested interest is. That's why you want it to do well. If you want to put more assets in, I mean, that's how I understood it when I was reading it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like shares then, essentially, in stock. I mean, you got stock. The trust is, you got stock in the trust or shares in the trust. You know,
Right.
and
But
they,
I also think it's not easy to cash them in. Like, you can't just sell it to anybody.
oh yeah,
I think it has to be kind of like agreed upon.
oh yeah.
Okay, so it says funding and beneficiaries using Table D, management as the basis. We create Table F to show you how the funding and beneficiaries appear on the trust. Joseph and Sandra separated their assets and now individually add them to the trust corpus. Table F, assets and trust capital units. Here the beneficiaries are different on each trust. By including Joseph Allen's mother, Karina, she receives added support from the trust. Okay, here's another diagram that's on page 70 of the PDF. So you got promissory notes, Oppenheimer mutual funds, what is that, 20,000 Joseph, cash 30,000 Sandra, Dane account, then you got 50,000 Sandra. Tammy has 10 TCUs, Rosie has 10, Karina has 10. Those are the beneficiaries. Those are the beneficiaries of the business trust. And then the management trust, they're also the beneficiaries, it looks like, of the management trust as well. And except Peter, let's see, Tammy, Rosie, Carl, Peter all have 10 under the management trust, plus Greta has 8. And then under the business trust, just Tammy, Rosie, and Karina have 10. And then you've got Carl and Rosie under the Dawson Trust have 10 TCUs. And the SM Myers, you got Peter and Tammy having 10 TCUs. Okay. So TCUs do not need to be equal for all beneficiaries. As the trusts grow, give added TCUs based on performance or circumstances. Layering trust for future protection. The original trust can spin off smaller trusts. In our example shown on Table G, the large machinery in one trust does not offer strong liability protection. Each type of equipment, because of its value, eventually needs its own trust. Some of the machinery listed is owned by the SM Meyer Trust, and loan payments are due on other equipment. The business trust pays the loans from the lease payments received. All 4 trusts have different beneficiaries. The asset holding trusts can have 2 types of units. Up to this point, we focused on trust capital units. There is a second category known as units of beneficial interest. Like preferred and common stock, the units are defined in the trust indentures. We explain units of beneficial interest in later chapters. Because George Allen, Joseph's brother, acting as executive secretary, sees the effective financial management of assets as time passes, he decides to get a business trust to ensure the welfare of his daughter. He added it under the Allen J. Family Trust Board of Trustees with another asset holding trust he named Clayton Jeffries. The Clayton Jeffries Trust holds vacant land he bought several years ago. With this asset in trust, he cannot be tempted to gamble it away, and thus he effectively curbs his darker proclivity of taking unnecessary risks when Lady Luck does not find favor with him. Only you and your trustees are the ones able to trace the connections among these trusts. In fact, the natural evolution of a trust often causes this to occur without making an effort to do so. Some readers may protest that this is not possible, yet even the IRS recognizes that any two trusts are separate and distinct if they have different grantors or beneficiaries. Okay, so that's key. Footnote 23 is 33 American Jurisprudence, TD 2617. Two or more trusts will be treated as one trust for purposes of the rules taxing trusts and their beneficiaries if same grantor and same beneficiary. Purpose is to avoid income tax. Husband and wife are treated as one grantor for purposes of this rule. Okay, expanding. Anybody have any questions about that before I continue? Okay, expanding. We mentioned that George decides to get another trust. So the following diagram adds his assets to the family group. So now we got the management trust at the top, the Allen J. Family Trust. Then you got two business trusts. So we already had the Smithers Family Trust under the management trust. Now you've got a business trust, Craig Lawson Family Trust, and Cassie and Karina are the beneficiaries with 10 TCUs each. And then you've got asset holding trusts, which is the Dawson Trust, S.M. Myers Trust, Canton Jeffries, Movian Allen, where the machines are. And it looks like Cassie is the beneficiary of the Canton S. Myers Dawson Trust. And then Peter and Carl are the beneficiaries of the Movian Allen Trust. Trust capital unit holders, as shown on Table F, remain. We show only the additions on Table G. Placing the electrodischarge machine in the Movian Allen Trust decreases the value of the S.M. Myers Trust. One motivation for a grantor to create a trust is to hold the right to place property into it in the future. For example, a young couple planning to buy a home and agreeing to place it into a trust immediately on closing would be wise to set up a trust 1 or 2 years before the planned acquisition. Future plans. If you expect a sizable influx of money, you need to set up the trust before receiving the funds. Getting overwhelmed when the money arrives often causes regrettable decisions later. Even having a trust with minimum activity is more beneficial than no trust at all. Trustee exchanges. Trustees may exchange their own property into an asset holding trust managed by the management trust. The trustee remains the trustee of his or her own property, while their co-trustee becomes the adverse trustee. In trusts where there are 3 or more trustees, the other 2 trustees often become the trustees, leaving the third trustee as the grantor of the trust. This is the better way to handle the new trust. Limited resources. If you have no major assets, house, car, bank, plane, etc., a single trust probably serves your needs. However, if you own such assets, you should create at least one business or management trust and 1 or more holding trusts. Unit registers. The trust capital units shown on these tables reflect only beneficiaries. The complete registers include the trust capital units for the grantor, exchangers, and trust officer. An explanation is in Chapter 9, Distribution. Units of beneficial interest are handled later. And then it says, see Appendix K for unit registers. Unit registers. Oh, crap. Come on. Unit K, Appendix K, I mean. G. Damn, G is like huge. Okay, H, Appendix H, where the heck is Appendix K?
It'd be nice to have a printout of this book, and so we can leaf through it and find those easier. Sometimes it's easier.
I know. I should have opened. Next time, I'll open 2 of these things. So that way,
that's another way to do it. Have 2 copies open at the same time.
Yeah.
Or 2
Or
computers.
I'll section these appendix out, so that way I can just boop, pop it open. Okay. Appendix K.
I've got a printed copy of this somewhere, but I don't know where it is right now. It's in my storage unit. So.
Okay, registers and certificates. Volume 1 mentions the Lewis Case Pager Trust. At one point, probably one of the largest trusts in the world. It owned a long list of impressive assets. Because of its size, it came under investigation of Congress. Hidden TCUs. The information about the trust came to light through the current day heirs discovering the TCUs in a vault. These financial instruments proved their claim on the trust assets. A long investigation evolved the facts as outlined in Volume 1. This trust became subject to plunder by some of the biggest names in the history of the financial world. Here again, we see when the trust is not administered for the beneficiaries, the focus dissipates. The finances of this trust have long been in disarray, and whether the heirs will ever see the funds was a subject of debate when Chapter 10 was first published. Right of disbursement. Note, though, that holding TCUs proved their right to the beneficial disbursement because TCUs are financial instruments. When you get them, keep them safe. The trust is likely to grow under good management, and if you want it to grow, you may want to participate in that management. Sample Format 44, Trust Capital Unit Register. The story about this Trust Capital Unit Register is given in Chapter 10. Since there was not enough space to include all of the columns, we deleted the last one entitled Trustee Authorization. Because of the seriousness of financial allocation, it is best to have the trustee's initial or draw a diagonal line across several of them, and one of the trustees can sign his or her name to cover many names. Our experience is that the Trust Capital Unit Registrar is an active trust. In an active trust needs to be updated or reviewed at least twice a year. Okay. So that's what it looks like. So you got the date it was issued, the holder's name, the quantity, the certificate number, date of transfer, amount returned, active TCUs, and total assigned. Oh, there's the beneficial interest. Okay, so this says Sample Format 45, Register of Units of Beneficial Interest. This register is used in conjunction with the Trust Capital Unit Register, and in some trusts, units of beneficial interest are not used. When using a 2-tiered unit system, management becomes more complex. The grantor decides how the distribution needs to happen at the beginning of the trust and express this intent through the trust indenture. Some grantors choose to make all beneficiaries trust capital unit holders. IBUs for grandchildren. This 2-tiered system can be more applicable when there are many grandchildren, and it is best they earn their right to have TCUs. Further, if there are beneficiaries who cannot be trusted, it is best to make them holders of units of beneficial interest instead of capital or trust capital unit holders. Audit of trust. Beneficiaries have the right to see the trust books and ask for an audit. We suggest those who hold units of beneficial interest are only on the asset holding trusts. This limits their ability to get into the management or business trust where substantial cash flow occurs. Okay, that makes sense. So you got certificates shown, give you an idea of the formality of it. We use a different certificate design to ensure the TCUs and the units of beneficial interest certificates are separate. In some trusts, the certificates are different colors. Because the samples are so small, we have reproduced the wording for the TCU. The text for the UBI certificates is similar, differing only in small details. Okay. So that's what a trust capital unit certificate looks like. And that's what a unit of beneficial interest looks like. All right, what did this say? Pursuant to that declaration of contract and indenture date October 10th, 2001, here creating the Sherman M. Patterson Family Trust Organization and in compliance with the terms and conditions granted there. Okay, units are fully paid. All right. Nope. Did I read this? Or did we stop here? Oh no, we read that. Okay.
You read expanding, so it's down below that. Let's see. Where?
Okay. Chapter 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're almost at 8 o'clock. Wondering if we should go back because I think there were some appendixes back here in chapter 3. Yeah, there were. Appendix H. Wait, I think H was for exchanges. Okay, so we got Appendix H and Appendix J, presentation 1. Okay, Appendix H and J. Guys, remember that, Appendix 8 and J. H. Okay, I think this is the start of them. Okay, so this was talking about the exchanges. So proposals and exchanges. This set of exchange paperwork evolved over several years. It comes both from formats found in various common law trusts and legal forms about buying and selling, converted for this specific use. Personally signed letter. Some investment companies request the letter from the exchanger shown as sample format 37, naming the beneficiaries. Because so much information contained on the letter is private, much of it needs to be blocked out. For example, the financial institution does not need to know how many TCUs are exchanged. Mostly it wants to be sure the exchanger took part in the in the trust setup. Revealing only one beneficiary name may or may not be necessary. Surrendering rights. The exchange or transfer needs clear documentation. The trustees must be sure the exchanger knows what he or she is doing and is clear about consequences, even though the indenture should have it in a paragraph about the grantor knows he or she surrenders all right to the asset. This formal exchange adds a layer of protection to further confirm the intent. The 4 parts of the initial exchange are the exchanger writes a letter to the trustees asking to exchange assets for TCUs. The letter has within it the following information: identification of the asset, motive for placing assets into the trust, how many TCUs he or she requests, and the name of the trust issuing the TCUs, name of beneficiaries, and fair market value of the assets. The Board of Trustees reviews the letter and approves or disapproves the exchange, noting the following in the minutes: identification of the asset, how many TCUs are approved, or a counteroffer. Bill of exchange requires the name of exchanger, identification of the asset, amount of approved TCUs, and value of the asset accepted. And you got asset detail description. These documents remain in the trust book as part of the original documentation setting up the trust. Any exchangers who later join the trust group need to follow this format. The Board of Trustees keeps these documents in the same section as the original exchanger documents. The fair market value of assets when exchanged provides the base to calculate long-term or short-term capital gains when the exchanger takes a large distribution. The process for later exchangers follows the same pattern. Sample format 35 minutes of exchange. We started with the minutes accepting the assets to which the letter of the exchanger attaches. These minutes evolved from other common law trust. And then we read that one. And then what was it? J, right? Appendix J. Okay, Appendix J, legal. Justice and legality are two different issues. We have a basic idea in our mind that justice has morals and ethics, and that what is fair and right wins in the end. Our legal setup does not incorporate justice in the same pure essence. What is right is a matter of interpretation, and using our procedural methods, presentation becomes key. The complexities of life with their many twists and turns create an unending panorama of ever conceivable predicament, the court game. The innocent often serve prison time while murderers and thieves run amok. Some astute researchers have noticed the history of the word court, taking its roots back in time. The judge can be viewed as a referee in a ball game, similar to tennis, while the lawyers are the players. This is why the judge manages the discussion between the lawyers who try to grand slam each other, hoping their opponent will, quote, miss the ball, unquote, or not have a comeback to the argument. In the end, the judge decides, but only based on the information given to him or her. It is not the judge's job to do the research of the case. Thus, justice becomes subject to the one who is more clever, who has researched the law to make it apply more favorable in his or her case. Sadly, the favorable decision often goes to the side with more money and resources than the other. The procedure is awkward. Thus, those who have not stood before a judge will find their first attempt unnerving. Further, not many lawyers go frequently to court, and training to stand before a judge is limited, even in law school. The gray area of truth. The truth is often immaterial under the American system of jurisprudence. The lawyer does not need to know whether his or her client tells the truth, only whether the client's position can win the argument. Therefore, accepting a client depends on the strength of the argument. Is the other side likely to cave in, or is the law weighty in the lawyer's client's favor? None of this has anything to do with justice. We have spoken with lawyers who know a particular position is right, but they do not want to get involved, do not want to do the research, or they need far more money up front than is available. Comfort and a sure argument weigh heavily when deciding what clients to take on and which ones to pass. Money and battles. That brings us to the other part, money. The poor and the rich have access to the courts, but the members of the middle class do not unless they represent themselves pro se. This is because legal fees run anywhere from $150 an hour to over $1,000 an hour for the higher paid defense attorneys. Please note, they get paid whether the client wins or loses. Many lawyers get easy money and are not interested in challenges, but only in ensuring the buck's in the bank. Why take a risk? Why stress over something when the same amount of money can be earned on easier cases? Do you blame them? If the client takes responsibility for directing the case, it is much easier for a lawyer to act. Once you know what you have to do, you have the research and insist on performance in a particular argument. The lawyer can always turn to you and shrug his or her shoulders if you lose. Well, that is what you wanted me to do. Prohibitive cost of being right. Lawsuits begin at $50,000 to you or the trust. If the money in the lawsuit will not gain more than $50,000, then do not start. Most lawsuits run about $100,000 and $200,000 and up. This leaves the middle class to defend itself, which takes skill. In Volume 1, we discussed contracts and said the black race became enslaved because it had no right to contract and did not have access to the courts to sue. This is what has now happened in the middle class. You can make contracts, but to enforce them is costly. Unless your trust has a strong cash flow, your only defense may be your ability to stand before a judge. This task is not impossible, and although daunting, once determination sets in, an uninitiated trustee can be unusually effective, using arguments a lawyer would not dare to say because of various obligations and connections with the courts. The legal matters presented below are a smattering of subjects we feel every trustee should know. Because the court cases are too long for this appendix, we have taken out several paragraphs marked by ... from some of the cases, leaving random information, so you may eventually become familiar with the subject matter. Finding the case. For those unfamiliar with the retrieval of court cases from either the internet or a law library, there are several methods. One of them is to register at www.findlaw.com. The other is to open an account with the law library, which can fax or mail cases to you, charging by the page. Presentation 1, Goldwater versus Altman. The following court case is a must-read for every student of trust. This is the first common law trust case in California where trust certificates are openly discussed. The question revolves around the responsibility of the trust to third parties. Use this case as a reference to word your trust indenture concerning how third parties are handled. Henry Goldwater, Appellate versus William Altman et al., Defendants Charles M. Conant et al., Respondents. LA number 9854, Superior Court of California, blah, 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 blah. October 1, 1930. Head notes. California Official Reports. Head notes. Trust, Massachusetts or business trust, when created. The so-called Massachusetts or business trust is created whenever several persons transfer the legal title and property to trustees, with complete power of management in such trustees free from the control of the creators of the trust, and the trustees, in their discretion, pay over the profits of the enterprise to the creators of the trust or their successors in interest. I'd trustees election partnership, where the trustees under a so-called trust are subject to election by the shareholders. The latter exercise ultimate control of the organization, and the organization is a partnership and not a true trust. I'd business trust controlled by trustees, personal liability for shareholders. Under a true trust, where the ultimate control of the business is retained by the trustees and not by the stakeholders, the latter are not personally liable on the obligations incurred by the trustees or the management agents appointed by the trustees. I'd promissory notes book account stated character of organization, personal liability of shareholders. And this action upon a promissory note executed by an organization through its president and upon a book account and an account stated, the organization in question is held to be a business trust with the ultimate control of its affairs in trustees, and therefore no direct personal liability attaches to the shareholders of said organization on said promissory note by virtue of the fact that they are such shareholders. Okay, hold on. Let me see how much this is. Oy, okay. We're going to have to leave this for next time. That's a lot. Or maybe you guys can read that on your own. But I just want to ask, does anybody have any questions what we've read thus far or comments?
It looks like this book is a good portion of it is the appendixes.
Yeah.
About a third of it or something.
I find like a lot of the stuff in their appendix is pretty freaking interesting.
Yeah. Well, those minutes were interesting. Or that.
I know.
The record.
There's so much information in this book. I'm going to have to read it like 5 times to really comprehend it all.
Well, that's why we're recording it. So you can just listen to it over and over and over again. But I like what they said about, you know, the whole legal system and how we really do have to, I mean, because that's what we're all trying to do is defend ourselves in court. And we're not even involved in a trust yet. So it's good experience to learn how to defend oneself in all cases before a judge to get experience so that when you do a trust and you have to go before a judge, that you're going to be golden. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I think it's nice to go through this. It's a pretty dry reading on your own, but to go through it with a group and be able to talk about it.
Be able to talk about it, yeah. That really is, I know it's helpful for me because I would have a lot of questions and I'd be asking myself and I'd be like answering myself. I don't know. Why are you asking me?
Talk to yourself. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.